Director and CEO of the Tampa-Hillsborough Expressway Authority, a position he's held since 2007. Under Joe's leadership, THEA converted the Leroy-Selman Expressway to all electronic tolling in 2010, making it Florida's first expressway to be completely electronic. As part of the innovation culture established under Joe's leadership, THEA competed against 57 other applications for one of 3 Connected Vehicle Pilot Project Awards. In 2015, USDOT awarded THEA one of 3 Connected Vehicle Pilot Deployment Program projects totaling $22 million. Joe has served as a member of the IBTTA Board of Directors for 9 years between 2011 and 2020. He's also served as both a member and a chair of the IBTTA Government Affairs Committee and the Audit Committee. Joe recently announced that after 14 years with THEA, he will be retiring in February of 2022. Joe, welcome to Café IBTTA. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Pat. Good to see you.
Well, this is Café IBTTA, where we drink coffee or tea or water or whatever your favorite beverage is, and we talk about things that are interesting, uplifting, relevant, and fun. And today I have a shout out to our president, Mark Compton, and the board of directors and all the members of IBTTA. We're in the process of putting together a new strategic plan, the new strategic direction for IBTTA. And we've gathered a lot of input from the board and the past presidents and platinum sponsors and young professionals. And we want to hear from you. So if you're interested in giving us your views about the future strategic direction of IBTTA, please contact me so we can take your thoughts and observations. Well, we are taking your questions today, and we want to get started right away. Since Joe is retiring, we thought it would be useful if all of you in our viewing audience told Joe what's on your bucket list. What are the things that you want to try to accomplish before you retire or before you go 6 feet under, okay? So using the chat function and selecting all panelists and attendees, please give us your thought, a word or phrase about what is on your bucket list. So Joe can be looking at your ideas and thinking about what he wants to do in retirement. All right, let's see what we have here. Jeff Seward has a really low bar. He wants to keep waking up every day. That's good. All right. Learn to golf. The Great Loop. Yeah, Martin Tyson. We'll talk about this on a future Café IBTTA. Martin is going on a big boat voyage of the Great Loop. Travel. Visit the Great Wall of China. Love it. Visit New Zealand. Travel more. Travel, travel, travel. Lots of travel. People, climbing mountains. Drive the Rubicon Trail. All right, I'm liking this. What do you think, Joe? Is this spurring any creativity in you?
Absolutely. There's some good ideas in there. Certainly things I would never have thought of. My go-to is the one, learn to golf. It's like you want to say play more golf, but I'm still learning. So it's a sad affair, but that's the way it is.
Most of the people I know who want to learn golf, they kind of play at golf. They're not really good golfers. All right. Mary Jane O'Meara wants to grow the perfect tomato. All right. The scooter scene from the movie Waking Ned Devine. Yeah, that's something on the bucket list. All right. We'll come back to the bucket list in a little while. For now, Joe, let's talk about you. You're not a Florida native. So I'd like it if you would tell our audience a little bit about your background and how you got to Tampa.
Sure. I actually came here from Maryland about 14 years ago, and my career started in transportation almost as soon as I got out of college. I worked as a planner in Baltimore County, but in 1980 I started Maryland State Highway Administration. Spent 4 years there. Went to their aviation administration in Maryland, spent 4 years there as an airport planner. Went back to DOT headquarters to help them run capital programs for 12 years. But my last 7 years, and I thought some of my best, were spent at the Maryland Transportation Authority. And that was the last job I held in Maryland before I came here for the last 14. And I have to say it's been it's been the best part of my career, the 14 years I've spent here. It was good in Maryland, but this was the better part. It's been great.
So, Joe, tell us a little bit about Tampa-Hillsborough Expressway Authority and the expressway and the facilities there. Just give us a sense of the scope and scale of Tampa-Hillsborough.
So it's a agency with what you would call as a single asset. We have the Leroy Summit Expressway, but we own some feeder roads that bring traffic to and from the expressway. We have what everybody may have already heard of as a reversible express lane, which is kind of an expressway within the expressway because it really operates independently of the rest of the facility, provided it acts as a reliever to what we call the lower or local lanes of the expressway. We're an agency that is independent of state and county. We're run by a board. Our governing board is 7 members, which has a lot of benefits to it in terms of being an employee of it. I really like it. Annual revenue is in the $80 to $90 million range per year. Depends on the most recent pandemic and what happens to you, but things have righted pretty well, and we're on track to make a full recovery as the rest of the country is, I hope, too. So it's been great. It's a forward-thinking agency, and it's a fun place to work as far as I'm concerned. It's going to be hard to leave.
Now, Joe, it being a fun place to work, there may be some people in our listening audience who may want to apply for this job, and there's still time. Is that right?
Yeah, I would encourage you to apply. It's the closing date time is this Friday at 5 p.m. So if you have an application to submit, if it comes in a minute after 5 p.m. on Friday, it's not going to make it. So we got to stick to the rules. But yeah, feel free.
There's as I understand, there's a job packet on the THEA website, and I think we've linked to it on the IBTTA website. So folks who are interested, go to the THEA website and find the job packet, and you too could be the next executive director of the Tampa-Hillsborough Expressway Authority. Okay, and Jeff Seward has posted the link in the chat. So there you go. You don't have to look around for it. Well, Joe, I want to talk a little bit about the culture of innovation that you've built at the Expressway Authority. The job packet that we've been talking about talks about your culture of innovation, and some of the examples include the transition to all electronic tolling and the reversible elevated express lanes. Talk to us about some of those things that define the culture of innovation that you've tried to build there.
So one of the joys of working for a small and self-funded agency is the flexibility you can get to explore creative concepts and new ideas. It helps that there's a lower bureaucratic burden, if you will. When I report to a 7-person board and we generate our own revenue, there's a lot of opportunity there for you to do creative things. And if you can deliver the basics of running the agency, you have an opportunity to ask your board to take on new concepts and ideas to grow transportation for the public good. And that's what we've been able to do. But I have to make it right up front. The spirit of innovation was here before Joe Waggoner arrived. In 2007, the year I arrived, was the year that this agency was receiving the President's Award from IBTTA for the reversible express lanes. So innovation was always part of the DNA here. When I did get here, though, working off of the REL is the first time I'd seen an all electronically tolled facility, and that was the REL. And I look at that, AET, transponders and all electronic tolling were kind of precursors of ACEs, the automated connected electric share conversation that we're engaged in right now. So after running AET on the REL, sorry about all the acronyms, folks, for a couple of years, we saw an opportunity to apply that to the whole Summit Expressway, and we did that. There were a lot of financial risks involved, but the customer benefits of safety, additional capacity it gave us, and a greener operation were worth the risk. And I also have to say the operating costs we knew would be lower to run it, and that proved itself. So it was a great first experiment in taking a risk with modern technology. ACES follows on that, and shortly after we converted the REL. I mean, shortly after we converted the whole Summit Expressway, we took ideas to our board to start exploring the ACES concepts out there. And what followed in short succession after that was we made the REL a designated test bed for people with automated vehicles to come and run, on the REL, test out their equipment, see how it works. We started the Florida Automated Vehicle Summit in partnership with DOT, and we've been heavily involved, if not leading that effort for the last 8 years for the state of Florida. And then we competed for that pilot connected vehicle project that you talked about. Got that up and running successfully. It's going great. As a matter of fact, we just added another element to it. We now have some automobile manufacturers, Honda, Hyundai, and Toyota out here testing their in-vehicle systems that they're providing and seeing how it interacts with our infrastructure systems that we built as part of our pilot. So it's been a great experience, and we're really very bullish on the idea of ACES and how it can improve transportation as a public good.
Thanks, Joe. Our guest today is Joe Waggoner. He's the Executive Director and CEO of the Tampa-Hillsborough Expressway Authority. And we are taking your questions. Please use the chat function and select all panelists and attendees, and we would love to hear from you. Joe, you've been talking about ACES, which you like that terminology. I tend to use CASE, for connected, automated, shared, and electric. You like ACES, and I think, maybe you've got a full hand of ACES, when you talk about that, automated, connected, electric, and shared. Tell us a little bit more about the project grant you got with US DOT and how that's proceeding.
Okay, so that grant was given to us way back in, I think it was 2016, but we presented them with a plan, with some concepts we wanted to test. And we designated about a 1 square mile area of downtown business district for Tampa, where you have every possible challenge you could have between feeding traffic to and from an expressway and running traffic on local arterials. It had a trolley car system, it had buses, and it, of course, it had pedestrians, bicyclists, and all the vehicles moving through it. We developed about 12 different applications we wanted to test by being able to connect the vehicles to our infrastructure, to the signal systems, to the buses even, because we outfitted a number of HART buses, our transit agency buses. We outfitted the trolley cars with onboard units. We put over 44 roadside units out there to communicate back and forth. And we actually, at the time, it was just a plan. We didn't have the hardware, all right? We didn't have the software. So we had to build the hardware, develop the software, install the onboard units in 1,000 vehicles, plus the buses and the trolley cars, and into, put the roadside units out there, get them built and put out there. And as you might guess, that was a lot of challenges, a lot of unknowns. But Bob Fry and his team get very high marks. He's our director of planning and innovation, because they were able to take something from what was a plan just on paper to make it a reality and be the first pilot project to be out there up and running and actually delivering data to US DOT, which is, one of the primary outcomes of this is, as a pilot, is feed data to the policymakers so they can help set the guidelines for how you roll this kind of technology out across the country and set standards. So it was a great challenge, but it was also, it's just very successful. It was actually inducted into the ITS Hall of Fame in 2019 as a successfully developed project. And we're going to keep it running. I mean, once we build it and put it out there, the grant money has been spent, but we're keeping it running. And lo and behold, we talked to DOT about bringing these OEMs, the original, the car manufacturers out here so they can test their equipment in our system. So it's an ongoing experiment that I think it's going to pay dividends for the rest of the country because it's providing that data set for everybody.
Joe, the importance of data, collecting good data and relevant data probably can't be emphasized enough. And your work in that project really demonstrates how your organization tries to work across the silos and break down those silos. And Joe, you're one of the people who's been a really strong advocate for having tolling and transit be more closely aligned. Could you tell us a little bit about that, both in alignment, sort of operationally, but also in terms of the finances?
Yeah. So it's a very different business model than the tolling business model. And for some years, I looked at price managed lanes or congestion pricing on lanes as an opportunity for transit to learn our game, so to speak. And I came up with an idea we call bus tolling lanes, not very creative, but bus toll lanes, basically repurposing a price managed lane to provide transit service. And talking to transit, it's like, here's the fishing pole instead of giving them the fish. I want to teach them how to do the job and acquire a new revenue source for them that would provide a sustainable service, number one, over time in that price management, because that's what price management's about. It's the way you can maintain reliable and fast trips on a lane of highway. But if you gain access to the revenue source, then you'd also have a sustainable revenue source to fund transit service. So the fishing pole and the business partnership is you invest capital equity in and you get the revenue share coming out. And it would be a great way for transit to increase that capacity of that lane and increase it as time goes forward, because congestion pricing, the power of a price managed lane is in the future. As your congestion grows and as time goes forward, it's a market priced way to control the volumes in there. Well, that revenue stream just increases dramatically over time. And that revenue source can be a means for transit to keep adding more buses into that lane if they want to. And that's done on the backs of people, if you want to look at it this way, who are driving their personal vehicles. And if you insist on calling them Lexus lanes, I would tell you it's a great way to address the social equity issues of those who can't afford cars or those who can't afford to pay the toll. Because then those in the Lexus vehicles are actually paying tolls that you're using to provide great, timely, fast transit service at the lowest cost possible, when the people driving their cars are actually helping you subsidize the transit service. So it's a very hard conversation to have with transit. It's like speaking a foreign language. They tend to think you're trying to get your nose under the tent, when honestly, I have no interest at all in running a transit service. It's just a great way to provide them a different way of modeling their service, and instead of going back to the public for new taxes, gain access to the same kind of revenue source we gain access to for sustainable operation.
Joe, here's a question somewhat related to this from one of our viewers. How does the recent announcement of Tesla's boring tunnel integrate into the current transit strategy?
Well, you'd have to go to Elon for that one. I think that it's he's got a lot of great ideas, and in Florida, I'd be curious to see how boring strategies work, because we're somewhat challenged when you're averaging is something like 20 feet above sea level. It's like anything you drill is going to be challenged by the water table. But maybe it's got potential, and I think it's a great opportunity for transit. But I'll offer this. I think ACES, and the reason I go with ACES is because, Pat, I have a very optimistic attitude about ACES, and I think the word ACES brings that to the table better than CASE. It's like ACES has a positive aspect in your mind, is how I look at it. And I think our future is ACES. It's just going to take a matter of time to get there. But going back, so, on your highways, let's say you get great connected vehicle connectivity and you can manage the infrastructure better, well, you're going to gain capacity out of your existing infrastructure. And let's look to the future when buses are somewhat more automated, actually able to operate in a caravan or in train. You could have buses running in price managed lanes as basically a light rail system. All right. They could link up for a trip, and even better, unlink and go out into the capillaries of the community when they leave the expressway system to provide, a different kind of transit service than you've ever seen before. You could have transportation network companies offering subscriptions to your ride to and from work every day, and that would become a competitor of transit. And then transit, if they're wise, they might even contract with transportation network companies to enhance the system service they provide to their customers. So I just think there are so many opportunities out there with this technology that's coming in the future that we just need to put our mind in the right place and try to embrace those ideas, seek collaboration, and advance the tech.
Joe, you have a question here from one of your neighbors to the north, Chris Tomlinson of the State Road and Tollway Authority. He asks, how much of the difficulty in the tolling and transit conversation do you think flows from the federal agencies as opposed to local agency reluctance?
I think it is probably 80% federal and 20% local. I've had conversations with my local transit agency people, and they get the idea, they understand it, but when you look at the federal transit programs, they don't have a lot of flexibility to look at this kind of concept. There are some small programs that it might fit under, but to compete at the federal level for large projects, you have to go new starts, and those new starts regulations were revised about a decade ago to exclude almost everything except rail type projects. So you're stuck with small starts, and that doesn't give you a lot of the funding you might need to take on these larger concepts we're talking about. And honestly, at the federal government, when they evaluate toll projects, cost effectiveness that we would think of is not what they think of cost effectiveness at all. Return on investment has nothing to do with, how does your balance sheet look at the end of the year? So having the federal regulators be able to translate this idea into something they can understand is probably the biggest challenge we have.
Yeah. Joe, I noticed you have several very short videos on your website that are sort of under the rubric of Get to Know Joe, and you talk about a lot of different topics there, and we salute your communications and public affairs folks for putting that together. But one of the things that really struck me was this notion of the essence of the business. And you talk about how your expressway authority runs more like the private sector than other transportation businesses. You sell a product, and your real product is time. Talk a little bit more about that notion of the essence of the business.
Okay. I'm pretty strong on this, and you've heard me say it when I was on the board. We've always got to remember our core function and what is the purpose for tolling to exist. Primarily, the origination. You
Right.
can build different models, but the cleanest one is kind of the model my agency has right now. We don't get any federal money. We don't get any state money. We don't get any local money. The only revenue we have comes from our customers, comes from the people who use our facility. So unless I'm making my customers satisfied and providing them the best service I can, they're not going to use my facility. And at the end of the day, I am responsible to them, and providing that best service is my product. We're saving them time. That's what we're selling them. We're selling them time and reliability. And we do that. The business model is, I've always compared it to, the average person might not understand what tolling is about, but most people want to buy a house, a private house, and they understand that I could either wait and save up my money and buy a house all cash, or I can go to a bank and get a mortgage. That's the same way the tolling industry operates. We present value a future revenue stream through the sale of bonds, and we use that bonds along with some cash we may have in hand to build that asset today, so you get to use it while you're paying for it. That's contrary to what a lot of local and state agencies do, which is a pay-go basis, where they literally wait till they have saved the cash to build the project. And then, so it's a way for us to bootstrap ourselves and do projects sooner than waiting for the pay-go option. That opens up a lot of economic opportunity for the community. The Summit Expressway is a great example of that. Just in the last 5 years, there have literally been billions of dollars worth of growth along the Summit Expressway. And when I say along, I mean I could throw a rock from the lane and hit the growth I'm talking about. So it's a very valuable asset to the economic well-being of the community. And it has a very strong business model that if you can stick with it, it is sustainable. We have a 10-year work program that has $1 billion worth of work in it. And you think about a single entity, a single facility agency, that's pretty remarkable. And that's a heck of a lot to do for a community. So it's a very positive thing.
Joe, I love that home mortgage model that you talk about. And I often talk about that in terms of America's first superhighway. When the Pennsylvania Turnpike opened in 1940, it took them 2 years to build 140 miles of that because they had all the money they needed up front and paid for it over time. Great example. Joe, as you look forward to your retirement next year, tell us about some of the big lessons learned you've had over the course of your career.
So I'd say the biggest lessons I learned was more about myself, finding balance points for me between patience and impatience, if you will. I'm always like to press and get things done faster. And I've got to be careful that I don't push that too hard and break something in the process. So that was like one of the challenges I had to learn. But in terms of the best advantage to anybody's career, and mine was show that you can do the basics, show that you can take care of business and do that well. That is the first step and the key to new opportunities in anything you want to do, whether it's taking the next job up or whether it's doing creative things like a CV pilot project or promoting ACE's technology and the conversation in your community. It's okay, to be passionate about what you do. That's another thing I learned. And it's good and it's better if you care. But I'd also say that you have to remember, and this is where I'm challenged, I have to remember on the other side of every discussion I'm involved in is someone who has that same passion and they're equally convinced they're right. So what you do and what I've learned to do is look for opportunities to collaborate and advance together. So that's as much philosophy as I'll offer on those things, Pat. Thank you.
I love that notion that the person on the other side of the issue is probably equally as passionate about that issue as you are. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind. Joe, a lot of young people entering our industry these days, young professionals, what advice would you give to people who are relatively new to our industry?
It's pretty simple and everybody's heard before. Find something you like doing. You don't have to love it. I've heard that I love my job. Well, I like my job. I like my job a lot. I can sit here and miss 3 meetings because I just started digging in on something that was so interesting to me that I forget everything else out there. That's a really neat thing to have in your get up and go to work every day kind of experience. And I'll go back to that thing of learn the basics, execute the basics. If you can't do that, you're not going to go to the next step. And that part, they go together. If you like your job, then your incentive to learn the basics is already built in, right? And so if you can do the basics, you like what you're doing, I think the rest will follow. I never had a grand plan of being where I am today. I just kept moving from one thing to the next. And the job description of the next job had 50 things on it, but there was always that one thing, at least in there, that was a thread that I could really embrace, and it just led to the next thing. So it's that simple. Find something you like and then do it well.
Joe, that's beautiful. Joe, I'm going to make a couple of announcements and then come back to you for some words of final wisdom. So don't forget to complete the survey you'll receive at the end of today's program so we can continue to make Café IBTTA great. We have several upcoming events for you. Tomorrow, July 15th at 11 a.m., a webinar Big Data from Concept to Implementation. This is sponsored by ETC. On July 20th, next week, a webinar, Innovation and Disruption Do Not Have to Mean Destruction, sponsored by A2B. And then July 22nd at 11 a.m., a webinar, Hot Emerging Markets, Focused on South America, presented by IBTTA's International Committee. Other important events coming up. We will have the annual meeting in person in Anaheim, October 10 through 12. And then in November 4 through 6, we'll have a 3-day maintenance engineering and roadway operations workshop with a technical tour, a day of programming, and then a service project. So, Joe, what final words of wisdom do you have before we sign off today?
I will keep it short. Challenge yourself, take risks, and enjoy life. It's that simple.
That's beautiful, Joe. Joe, it's such a pleasure to have you here as our guest on Café IBTTA. Thank you very much. And to all the members of IBTTA, be safe, keep in touch, and we'll see you down the road. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everybody.
Pat. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.